The Catholic Church. Many people think of the Catholic Church as just a place of worship, just a place where we go Sundays to pray and worship, and sometimes even just a place. However, the Catholic Church is much more than that. The church is not only a place, but a community of people who follow its faith. The church is a physical place, and it is also the members that reside and pray in that physical space. Usually, the church has a different connotation to different people. Usually, people may tend to think that the church is outdated, that many of its ideals are old and out of touch in style, and even that it is like a museum. However, the church is not a museum. Yes, it has ideals that are based on the teachings and writings of the apostles from old teachings, but it is much more than a museum. In my opinion, I believe the church is an ever-flowing and ever-evolving place. There are many ways that the church has been shown to be ever-flowing, and one of those ways is through the way the church has evolved over time. The church does have rules and other beliefs that have been taught since Jesus' ministry. However, the way in which they were taught has evolved. As the church evolves, many of the beliefs and approaches taken to the teachings of the values of the church have changed. One of these ways is through how the bishops and deacons and popes came to be. The bishops, deacons, and popes are all seen as direct successors to the apostles. The 12 apostles were the first teachers of the Catholic Church. The direct successors of the apostles later on became the Pope and his cardinals. These mediums, the church continues its legacy set by Peter and adjusts to society, and everybody else who is associated with the church continue to evolve and continue to educate others with the teachings of the church. The 12 apostles in the church are like a tree, and the bishops and deacons are apples that do not fall far from the tree. Similar to how the bishop and cardinals are educators and teachers of the church, during the Renaissance period, the teachings of Christianity were an important and key part of the time period. During this time period, many of the things that were often forgotten about or were undermined in teachings were revitalized, and many beautiful pieces were created using the designs and principles of the Christian church. One of these art pieces specifically being the creation of Adam by Michelangelo Buonarroti. During the Renaissance time period, Christianity had a major influence on the way that art and architecture were made. And an example is the famous art pieces such as Michelangelo's Buonarroti's creation of Adam, helped keep people intrigued and interested in Christian artifacts and art. Comparing this art piece to previous art pieces made before, many of the art pieces created in this era had distinct and unique designs compared to those of previous times. Along with the increased interest in the church during and after the Renaissance period, the interest in the teachings of the church also increased. However, many of the things that were taught or were written in the time period did not fit into the current era, however. So the solution to this was the founding of the Council of Trent by Pope Paul III. Around the same time period, many Protestants were trying to come up with new regulations and reformations for the church. In response to this, the church started a Reformation Committee, commonly known today as the Council of Trent. With the founding of the Council of Trent, the church had directly addressed many of its critics by having the Council of Trent address many of the issues facing the church at the time. With the Council of Trent finally meeting, the church had assigned its reform and brought the church back together. After a 300-year time period, St. John the 23rd decided that it was time for a new reformation of the church to occur, and with this came the Second Vatican Council. The Second Vatican Council was a sign of change in the church. The Second Vatican Council is a major sign of change in the church, and the Second Vatican Council, started by Pope John the 23rd, was created to adjust the church to the modern era. St. John the 23rd was a very important piece to the founding of the Second Vatican Council, and was a very important and fundamental part of leading the church into a new era. Many found this as a shock, as he did not seem or look like the type of person to be supporting and advocating for such a drastic and sudden change to the church and its teachings. The Second Vatican Council is probably the most important and most valuable source of evidence as to why the church is an ever-flowing garden. The founding of the Second Vatican Council was to address specific situations that the church had experienced around the world. The reason for this council's creation was to help the church and its followers around the world face prevalent issues with thoughtfulness and hope. Many leaders and important members of the Catholic Church were received with positivity and excitement for how John Paul XXIII and the deacons and bishops would meet to adjust the current and modern era. With all these items and reformations in mind, what actually is the church? The church is a sacrament. It has human and divine elements. And the church, I believe, is an ever-flowing garden, as human elements of the church will always be changing and continue to change as time goes on. The church is a sacrament. The church not only being a sacrament, it is also made up of two specific elements, a human element and a divine element. With the church both being human elements and divine elements, the church will forever need to evolve like a garden. The church has not stayed like a museum, as many reforms and many adjustments to the ways it approaches teachings and approaches modern day teachings have changed. The church has beliefs and values that are based in the past. However, the church has always tried to evolve and tried to adjust to the era that it is living in. The church has done reforms and has adjusted itself to its era. The church looks to adjust and looks to connect to its followers in the era. The church, I believe, is a garden.